And we're live. We're going to do a short video introduction on the central banking system, and we can start with a nice little story about Rachel's epiphany last night.
Oh, okay. Okay. This is cool. Yeah, I was just having a discussion with a friend and going into further detail about why I won't support Bernie Sanders style social programs in the US. He basically said, well, imagine a world where, he said, if America was functioning correctly, would you support more social programs or something like to that effect? And I basically explained that it's not that it's not that I'm against the social programs, it's how I'm taxed, and how basically all of my income is susceptible to be taxed by the government, who, to me, being trillions of dollars in debt to the Federal Reserve, which is a central private bank, is an example of someone irresponsible with money. So like in real life, it's like, why would I be okay with someone not only asking me for money, but taking my money, who is like the worst person with money in the world? Like, they don't responsibly spend it at all. But not only that, not only is this person in massive debt, but they'll do things like bail out their murderer friends out of jail with that money. And so they're taking my money to like then go bail out criminals and do all these bad things with my money. And then I'm like, so it really starts to get to be a problem for me when we have this whole central banking structure that is based on debt and being able to create money out of thin air, and and trillions of dollars, trillions of Americans' tax dollars just disappear, and the chairman of this private bank will say, we don't have to tell you where that money is, So that was my whole explanation.
This private bank thing is, I wouldn't characterize it like that. I would characterize it as it is part of the government, because the president appoints the chair of the Federal Reserve. It's set up, but it's de facto under the control of the government. And here are some things. When the central bank makes a profit, above a certain point, they're taxed at 100%, and that goes to the Treasury.
Mm-hmm.
Right? You might think that, so that's good. But the real problem is, this is the real problem, is that as soon as the Federal Reserve makes a loss, they send a bill to the Treasury. And since they've been doing all of these QE programs, what they've been buying is a load of bad stuff. And so they've increased their balance sheet to like 4 trillion of stuff that they've bought. And a lot of those can turn out to be bad investments. And then they send a bill to the Treasury. Now, in the end, many people will say, oh, it doesn't matter, they can just print the money. But that's part of the problem. By bailing all this out, by trying to dissolve, the errors are still there. By trying to dissolve them by creating new money, that money eventually works itself into the system. So what has been happening recently is there is a put behind the stock market where, with low interest rates, people are effectively forced to go into the stock market because they can't get any yield anywhere else.
Right.
But you see, the thing is, so the type of people that have money in the stock market tend to be like it tends to be really rich people who invest. And also, yes, there are some private pension schemes that invest in the stock market, but it's But in terms of middle America hasn't really got the pool of savings in order to invest in the stock market. So,
Right.
for the last 8 years, you've had the general economy weakening and weakening and weakening. And if you had a true measure of inflation, then it's weakening every single year. And this is what people are feeling in their standard of living. That it is, you know, it's not recovered, it's weakening. Yet at the same time, you've got the stock market going up. And you've got an elite that participates in the stock market. And of course, that elite is well connected to the government and the politicians.
Yes.
So you get this corporatism, this crony capitalism with low interest rates and the central bank. This gives proper capitalism a bad name, and it increases the gap between rich and poor.
Well, that's what I was bringing up, the example of how they use the money to then bail out these large corporations. I mean, it's like if you really look into all the little connections, you can see how it's a crony network of individuals that are using the way the system is structured for their advantage, because it has just enough kind of smoke screen and lack of accountability to it, to where those people, they don't see what's really going on.
The guy that was the head of the Treasury under Bush towards the end, during the bailout, worked for Goldman Sachs. And he got, now what he did, I've got a little bit of trivia about Goldman Sachs, is they bailed out, he said, I think it was Hank Paulson. He used to be an American footballer. He used to be a big offensive lineman, like 6'6" or something. And Hank Paulson, he worked for Goldman Sachs. Goldman Sachs were going to go bust on these derivatives, but they had insurance on their derivatives from AIG. So basically, if AIG went bust, Goldman Sachs would go bust. And because of his connections with Goldman Sachs, he said, "Oh, we've got to bail out AIG, American Insurance Group, so they can then bail out Goldman Sachs' friends." So all this cronyism. Oh, and I've got a little bit of. So you know who else was bailed out by Goldman Sachs being bailed out?
No.
Jerry Ryan. Jerry Ryan, the actress that played Seven of Nine. Because she was married to Jack Ryan, who was running the Senate against Barack Obama. In fact, let's use his proper name, Barack Obama Jr. That's his real name, Barack Obama Jr. And so his dad, when you call your son Junior and then you leave him, that's a little bit extra bad.
What do you mean then you leave him? What do you mean?
Well, just abandon him and say, "Oh, you can go up with your mother. I don't want to." So you call your son Junior.
Oh yeah.
It's almost as if you're calling your son Junior, it's like an extra special connection.
Right.
Right, and then you leave him.
Oh, yeah. I'm not familiar with like all that history, but
yeah. And so Barack Obama Jr. and I'll say Bill O'Reilly Jr. as well because he's a junior. I'm letting it. You're gonna have to live with it. Now let me tell you something else. I can tell you who else is a junior. Bill Gates. Bill Gates is a junior.
Bill Gates Jr. Oh.
Oh yeah. Oh yes.
Anyway, yeah.
Now a lot of these juniors don't like being called junior, such as David Mark Kersey doesn't like being called junior.
Oh yeah.
Oh, I shouldn't have said that. But if they don't like it because they get it throughout their lives, they get junior.
Yeah.
Anyhow, so the point is that Jack Ryan is also the name of a character in spy novels or something. He was running against Barack Obama, and they were able to get out the divorce papers between him and Joey Ryan, and that made him pull out. And then Alan Keyes took over against Barack Obama. So this is how Joey Ryan influenced that Senate race. Now, when she divorced Jack Ryan, she got about $40 million in Goldman Sachs shares. And I remember saying, "Oh, he only asked for a third. Only asked for a third of his wealth, but she got like 40 million."
Yeah.
But she's rich already. I mean, like, she has a ton of money. It's like she's done over like 200 episodes of television because she did 100 episodes of Star Trek Voyager. Like,
Yeah.
she's maybe like 250 to 300 episodes of television. This is not going to be a poor woman. And
right.
So she had about 20 million, 30 million in shares. Right. And so when AIG is bailed out, Goldman Sachs is bailed out, Jerry Ryan is bailed out.
Right. So, and I feel like this, I mean, we're literally talking about actors and people, you know, connected to people in politics. And I mean, it's just, I feel like this discussion right here should just kind of, I feel like at least it just clicked for me, just the disparity that we are talking about, like to the common person, like what we're talking about right now is such a different world of just enormous wealth that's being moved around in this crony network of people, and it's money that it's not helping. It's like not circulating properly. It's just being like passed around by already really rich people. You know, it's not. It's, I don't know. Does that make sense? It just feels like
it gives capitalism a bad name,
and it's not circulating properly like it normally would because. Because there's people that should experience loss and should experience failure, and then they don't. And so...
Yeah, and what would happen is, and again, it requires a bit of TI. Oh, I'm blinded. Put the curtain across. That means I'll get less. Oh, I know what I'll do. I'll just adjust the fan. Oh, there. Turn it a bit. I'll turn it like that. Oh, right, risk it falling off. Right. Right there. What was I going to say? Oh yes. I'm back in focus.
There you go.
When right, in a proper economy, with what I mean is like by proper interest rates, and I mentioned right, central banks. They distort everything. There's so many distortions. This is how it should be.
Yeah, that's what I want to hear.
Your proper banking, how it should work is the interest rate should be determined by the actual amount of savings.
Right.
And the actual savings actually represent something because the amount of real savings is actually dependent on something. And that would have been on past productivity being greater than consumption.
Mm-hmm.
And and so you're looking at resources and then consumption of those resources. So it's almost like you have these pent up resources that are not being used because they're not being consumed. So they're there to be like pushed over. And this way, with this kind of resource allocation, you won't get inflation, you won't get price rises. And so if you have a lot of savings from an economy that was very profitable in the past and a very efficient economy, so it's like so what that means is you got a lot of people lending money, and these banks, they need to pay their depositors interest. So they need to lend it to someone. So they're going to be competing for lenders. No, sorry, they're going to be competing for borrowers. So the rate is naturally going to be lower.
Right.
Now, the fewer the savings there are, then you've got that supply and demand thing. The actual supply of savings is small and the demand from borrowers is high. And then so your natural rate of interest will be higher because there's a smaller pool of savings.
Right. And so so I can work this out in my brain, that encourages people to save with higher interest rates?
Yes. And then eventually the amount of savings builds up and you have this wonderful dynamic equilibrium.
Right.
That comes into and it would be
because it's a natural system. Eventually, it has a flow to it, and that's the root in the language of the word currency. Actually, is it comes from current to the sea, so it's like kind of like this tidal wave that's how it's supposed to work, and it's supposed to be as uninterfered with as possible. It you know, the closer it mimics the natural, just the plain and simple natural. If people have more resources and are saving more, then the interest rate goes down, and then that helps the money flow back out, and all the resources, and then it'll kind of flow back in when people start to need to save again.
Yeah, I mean, because the thing is, you can't just have the government add 3 zeros to everyone's bank accounts.
Right.
And create wealth.
Right.
Because if you look at wealth as money, then that would work. You could stuff $1 million in everyone's bank account. Right,
exactly. Yes. But the dollar is not the value. It's a representation of value, like you said, of like past productivity, and it's, you know, it means something. That's what the value is. So can you explain that, like what the dollar specifically represents?
Well, you've got a medium of exchange. So I think some of the definitions of what money is that it needs to be a medium of exchange. It needs to be a store of value. It needs to be interchangeable. So if we talk about the qualities of gold and silver, which is it is I think they call it, so for something to be a commodity, that means each unit of a commodity is the same as another unit.
Right.
So for instance, diamonds are highly liquid in that they can be converted into cash and back again, but they are not a commodity because they're not interchangeable, because diamonds are of different quality, whereas gold is a commodity. So it's like 1 ounce of gold is the same as another ounce of gold.
Right. So this goes back to why we used to have a gold-backed dollar, because that actually represented a limited resource.
Yeah, and also, I've got a book for you. There is a book written by Neil Ferguson called The Ascent of Money.
Oh, okay.
And he's a historian, but he's not a left-winger. He's a Scottish conservative-ish politician. This, The Ascent of Money, Neil Ferguson.
Okay.
And he actually gives the example of what happened to the Spanish in South America. They found an enormous mountain that was full of silver, but they overmined it. They flooded the market with silver, and so the cost of the silver coins went down. The actual value, because, you know, it's. I have a little line for this. I think I put it like this: money is a bid, not wealth in itself. So if for the Game of Thrones fans out there, I will say that Rachel's standard of living, Ardub, and it's not just me, folks. Other people have had this genius idea of calling her Ardub. So her standard of living is better than Cersei Lannister's in Game of Thrones, except maybe you don't quite have as good a dress as Cersei had in the last episode. She had this really nice black dress. I don't know if you've seen that yet.
I haven't. No, I have yet to get into it.
Right. So if you think of someone 1,000 years ago, they could have so much money, but were they wealthier than you?
I mean, in terms of what, like the fact that we have all this modern technology now and this stuff that takes all these resources from all over the world in the palm of our hand, like they didn't have that.
If we convert wealth to another concept, standard of living.
Oh, okay.
Then we can sort of say then we can sort of make a judgment call. Who had the better standard of living?
You mean like what? Like what compared to what?
So someone 1,000 years ago who like was like super rich, in
Right.
terms of like
Yeah.
had a load of gold, had a load of money, but who was wealthier?
Right. Well, obviously, people today.
So the difference between and people are wealthier now because of technology.
Yeah.
And in order to develop technology, we need capital.
Right.
And in order to get capital and capital in real interest rates low, what a lot of people do is they borrow money from the bank and then they put it in the stock market because they've got that nice carry. If you can borrow from the bank at 1% and then get a dividend of 3%, happy days.
Mm-hmm.
You're just going to borrow money and put it in the stock market. So, folks, anybody out there who can get a fixed rate loan at 1% from the bank, put it in the stock market. Foreign stocks. You're going to spread the risk out and you'll make money. But it's difficult to get a fixed rate loan.
Mm-hmm.
So another thing with low interest rates, it stimulates more consumer spending.
Right.
So in the short term, it gooses the GDP figures. And
so why does it encourage consumer spending for a low?
Because people can borrow money at a lower interest rate.
Right. Okay. So yes. Okay. Right.
And so everyone does it at the same time. But what it means is when the bills come due in the future, say 10 years down the road, they've got to pay for the past spending.
Yeah.
And then so you're having it's almost like you're having your future consumption now. And so, but eventually the bills come due in terms of like when the future then arrives. Now, what you could argue is that there's a different generation of people, like a different succession of people who are able to borrow money. You know, so for instance, if we say a load of people, say 5 years ago, loads of people have been borrowing money. And now the future arrives, and now they've got to pay their past bills off, so they can't pay. So it's almost like you've got to then get to then borrow money from the future to pay for it now. So it's like you almost like need a new generation of people to come in, and for them to get in debt as well. So it's almost like a little bit like a Ponzi scheme.
Yeah, that's where I'm wondering, how do we fix this? How do we stop this from being such the common thing to do? Why is it the thing to do that everybody goes into debt? It seems like we could have a healthier society where you could still take loans, but it's not the thing that everybody does in every circumstance. Like, why does it have to be the way that people can't? Apparently, people used to be able to afford a house basically on 1 year's salary. I've seen a statistic that shows like the average 1 year salary or something of someone could buy a house. And today it's like very different. It's very skewed. So everybody has to take out a big mortgage.
Yeah, and it was like the deposit. I think the deposit used to be like 25%.
Yeah, it was big. People would knock out a big chunk.
I don't know if it was necessarily a year's salary, but it was not much more.
Yeah, it was maybe not quite, I
remember. It was a lot less.
It's a lot less
than it is now. I mean, we're not that libertarian. We're not going to push the boat out that far. That's a little bit rose tinted there, Rachel. I mean, come on.
With what?
To say a year's salary could buy a house. I mean, come on.
I saw that. I'm gonna find it.
I don't necessarily trust that one. I think maybe like 5, because people still had like 25-year mortgages in those days. But in terms of the actual ratio between the price of the house and the yearly earnings, yes, it was a lot of a smaller ratio, and people had now actually comparing standard of living now to the 1950s for white people is a much more interesting discussion years ago, because you could make certain claims about the amount of free time that you could afford a housekeeper, maybe a married couple could afford a housekeeper, and now they couldn't. They haven't got as many gadgets. But what you could say is that maybe the woman was better off then than now, because they don't tend to buy the gadgets as much as men anyway.
Mm-hmm.
So what I would sort of mean is, what I would say by that is, maybe you could think that a woman who, because women worked in the past as well, because those women that weren't married worked, or that starved. So that's why a third of women were actually working in the 1950s and 60s, because they weren't married. So maybe if we've got to compare like with like, so a double income household in the 1950s and 60s, the couple would probably have been able to afford a housekeeper, a home help, a maid. And the only way people can do that in the United States now is, and I think you might be able to confirm this, is they usually have like an illegal immigrant who can help them out with the house when both parents are working and they've got children.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like in certain areas, I don't know how widespread it is, but maybe in California, I'm sure it's.
Oh yeah, that's what I've heard about.
Yeah,
California, because the taxes are so
much,
high.
Right.
The illegal immigrants actually keep the economy afloat, because they're able to do things at a cheaper wage, and of course they're not taxed because they're outside the system. So yes, they get paid less than American citizens, but they're also not being taxed.
Right. I found a page with the price of a home to income ratios, but it's loading. I think it's like 2 point. It used to be, I think it was like 2.5 times.
That's a lot different from one.
Yeah, that's a lot different. But I'm trying to get to the comparison so I can see how different it is today.
Yeah, it was, and also the size of the deposit was like 25%.
Yeah.
Yeah, but actually, I mean, from an economic point of view, borrowing money to buy a house is not so great for the team. It's not so good for the team.
Really?
It's better for the team to rent and then have your money in the bank and it being lent to business. That's the best kind of loan, is a loan going to business, because then you get more, because it's not a loan for consumption, it's a loan for more production.
Right. Oh yeah, interesting.
Because like, again, if you have interest rates too low, it stimulates too much of a housing market.
Right.
And ultimately, in a housing market doesn't lead to production. It will lead to like areas of like home improvement and things like that, but it doesn't really help with trade balance. Because the ultimate thing is more production, more stuff, cheaper stuff, more purchasing power, and how much the United States and UK is surviving on productivity of China. I mean, that is what's pushing up the standard of living. The fact they're able to buy so many electronics, consumer electronics, at a lower price. Of course, certain personality types, as we know, will appreciate that more than others. Yeah, your NTs will love that. But because I was talking about one of the male-female differences. If you were to compare, say, the average boy now, what their Christmas presents were like compared to, say, if we can say Jack Kennedy's Christmas presents. The average boy now would have had better Christmas presents than Jack Kennedy. Even though
hold on. Sorry.
Yeah, go on.
Say that again. I was distracted with
I was just saying that the average boy now has better presents. 8-year-old boy will have better presents, better toys than Jack Kennedy had.
Yeah.
But if we compare a girl in the 1950s, the girl now might say, I'd rather have a pony. They might have the, so what we could say is that the girls' toys have not improved as much as the boys' toys. And the only way that girls' toys can get better toys is to actually have the boys' toys. Because they still divide them up a little bit weird in shops. These are the girls' toys in pink. And then these are the boys. That's what it used to be like in the back of the Argos catalogue. It would be terrible girls' toys. It's like, what do they make for them?
I know. I didn't really like a lot of toys.
I mean, it's great for the NT girls because they can have the computer. They probably wouldn't want to have the pony.
Well, that was me. I just wanted my computer. Yeah. I got on the computer since I was like 11, and I was building websites. But it was a social thing.
Yeah, there you go. I mean, because the thing is, in the past, before, it's almost like women didn't use computers until they were useful enough.
Well, yeah, for me, I was like, oh, there's chat rooms. I was getting on those AOL chat rooms, like sitting on there all day lying about my age, saying I was 18 and I was like 12.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun. So that's probably because I had another friend who was my age, and she was an ESFP. She's definitely, I still know her today. And it was just funny because we're just two young girls doing totally nerdy things like building websites and learning HTML code. And it was all because we were like involved in these online communities. So it was like a social kind of motivation, but we were interested in building the websites. I don't know. It was just interesting because it's not thought of as like girly things, but I mean it was.
It's still the case that in, say, your Linux community, there's hardly any females. It would be like... Yeah.
Well, because it's not social. Nobody else has it.
It's almost like your NT boys would use computers just for the sake of using a computer. No actual, like, concrete benefit. But then it's like a woman would say, oh, I'll use a computer if I can use this program that's really good. Like...
Right. That's like something. What I did. Well, like
Excel, Word, or something... productive, where it is a tendency for males to do things on computers that are just for the sake of using a computer.
Yeah. Just to get back real quick, because I did find the statistics.
Excellent. Very good.
I guess so. In the 1950s, the home price to income ratio was 2.2. So 2.2 times the year's salary. But now, I think this is... this is recent. This is like 2013, 2014, and it's 3.7%, 3.7 times. So that takes 3.7 years salary for a home.
Now you have to... If the ratio now was the same as the 1950s, imagine all the stuff that could be bought instead of paying for the mortgage.
Right. And see, and then this website even starts talking about cars. Like, cars didn't change as much as the home prices. It was like 0.44% of your year's salary to now it's 0.40, or it's 46%. Or no, it's 60. It's 60. It's 60 now. But now there's 0.79%, not 0.79% of your year's salary is now going to student loans for most people. So there's this whole other spending that is taking a huge amount of people's income that didn't have it all back then.
So really. if we can compare a load of other things, so there's that, and also Peter Schiff did a video. In fact, I've done a video. It would be a bit incestuous though for us to do a video where I'm playing a video of me, a video of Peter Schiff comparing the 1950s standard of living, and then it's also.
We could do another video on that, just the comparing the standard of living. That could be interesting.
And then also you got to think. Oh yes, Peter Schiff said that his dad, Erwin Schiff, the great Erwin Schiff, the Libertarian hero who died in jail because he wouldn't give in, said that he used to sell health insurance, and it was catastrophic major medical. So this was something that only kicked in when something really bad happened, like a big accident or a cancer. And he said that policy was just $20 a year for catastrophic major medical.
Wow.
And the deductible was quite low. So the actual cost of healthcare is a lot more than it used to be.
I mean, did he talk about it adjusted to income? Because the income in the 50s was like an average annual salary of like $9,130. That's the last figure I saw. But $20 out of that, I mean, that's nothing.
Yeah.
Still.
We can talk about healthcare as well, because Peter Schiff has talked about that a lot and talked about education a lot. But this is a good section. This is we're talking about. So, is there anything there on rents? The percentage of rent as part of an income.
Let's see. There's tuition. Yeah, I don't think it covers rents.
I mean, if just informally, if you talk to people who are like 50 about when they went to university, you can ask them about how much they paid.
Yeah.
How they paid it off. So it's like within our lifetimes, you know people who paid a lot less when they were at university, and it should be. There should be increases in efficiency. The fact that the lecture halls are probably bigger now. You've got bigger screens. You've not got people working with filing cabinets and cards. It should be a lot more efficient.
Right.
And
it should have brought some cost down. I mean, that's what you would think.
There is a load of stuff going on with these American universities.
Yeah, that's a whole other thing. Yeah.
What I'm highly suspicious of is how you do not get any congressional investigations into. You get investigations into the price of oil. You don't get any investigations into the price of university, and it's almost like to go after their old, what was it, alma maters.
Mm-hmm.
So we need to investigate what's going on there.
Definitely.
Oil. What about big education?
I mean, totally. Yep.
And you get this fact where you've got universities that are taking government money, and yet they're able to say, they're able to have free speech zones.
Right.
And yet any other kind of incidents where if it's on the other side of the coin, where say someone's doing something conservative, they'll say, oh no, you're accepting federal funds, you can't do that.
Right.
So the Republicans...
Yeah, interesting double standard. That's an interesting double standard there, for sure. Because I do agree that if you're using public money, then okay, you like there's a separation of.
Yeah, but the problem is though, if once you accept that premise, it means that once you have wicked high taxes, then it's like you have to accept the public funding. It's like what the federal government does. They tax all the state citizens, and then say, well, if you don't do as you're told, you don't get your federal funding. And then they should say, we wouldn't have to take your federal funding if you didn't tax our citizens so much.
Right.
You can see how much of a federalist I am, our citizens.
Well, I'm the same way. I think that the goal of every state should be to have to depend as little as possible on that. It's like, it just seems obvious to me.
I think the U.S. Constitution is great, with one flaw that it should have had in right from the start. Instead of all these mentionings about rebellion, they do mention about crushing rebellion in the Constitution. So these people who think they can leave, no, you can't leave. There's little you've read it, Rachel, probably many a times. There's little bits in there about rebellion and insurrection, and that can only mean if you try to leave, we're not going to let you. Because what else does insurrection and rebellion mean? They can only mean rebelling against the federal government.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if they'd have done what they did with the EU, what I would have done, first article of the US Constitution that I would have put in, you can leave if you want to, but you can't come back for 10 years. So you better think about it if you want to leave, because you'll be on your own for 10 years. So there's a little price to pay if things, and actually charge them a fee to be readmitted, because then what would happen is that one would have left, they would have had a problem, then they'd try and get back in again, and that would have been I would have put that in, that you can leave if you want to. You know, we think our union is so cool that we will let you leave. But we think you'd come back again.
Yeah, I totally get what you're saying. Yeah, I mean, at the time, it just probably didn't make any sense. Like,
No, it would have, because I would have said, well, why aren't you offering that? I mean, what would make people, because they already had the rules of confederation, I think, articles of confederation. It's because they didn't want to. It's because the fix was in, wasn't it? Because the politician, and I'm not even sure how legal it was, because the actual constitution was not actually ratified by the state legislatures. They called their own constitutional conventions. So they actually subverted the democratic process in each state, in my opinion.
Oh, wow, interesting.
Because they called constitutional conventions.
Right.
It wasn't ratified through the state legislatures. Yeah, they called constitutional conventions. So
we think that there's all these great principles for liberty, which there are in the Constitution, but then basically all these other federalist things got
also
put in there.
Here's the thing that's interesting. Within about 10 or 20 years of the creation of the United States, the same people produced the Aliens and Seditions Act, which severely curtailed freedom of speech. I think you might be able to find that. It's the Alien and Sedition Act. It might be the early 19th century. Judge Andrew Napolitano talks about this a lot.
Yeah, I remember learning about it. Passed by Federalist Congress in 1798, signed into law by Adams. They were new powers to deport foreigners and made it harder for new immigrants to vote.
There's all the stuff about the clampdown on freedom of speech as part of it.
Yeah, I'd have to.
Yeah,
look.
That's why it's got the sedition part in there.
Right. It's freeze.
No, you can't criticise the government. That's sedition. There's your key word.
Yes, it says that it led to a new definition of freedom of speech in the press.
And again, this is the same generation, pretty much. The same people that would have been around when they actually created the country.
Here it is. So, interesting. Yeah, okay. So sedition, if people don't know, means inciting others to resist or rebel against lawful authority. U.S. Sedition Act first outlawed conspiracies, quote, to oppose any measure or measures of the government. Going further, the act made it illegal for anyone to, quote, to express, quote, any false, scandalous, or malicious writing against Congress or the president. Significantly, the act did not specifically protect the vice president, who, of course, was Jefferson. Interesting. This is just a constitutional site. Let's see. Additional language punished any spoken or published word that had, quote, bad intent to, quote, defame the government or to cause, quote, hatred of the people toward the government. Interesting. That really, I mean, even if you're saying the truth, but if it incites hatred towards the government, you can't say it. It's like, even if it's true.
It shows that the people that produced this document that was so great were flawed people.
Right.
And when was that act? When did it come in, the Alien and Sedition Act?
It was 1798.
Wow. So only about 22 years?
Yeah,
later.
And it was when John Adams succeeded George Washington in 1797. And Adams, obviously was the big Federalist, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Now, Federalist has slightly changed meaning.
Right.
Between then and now. Now, it means like a states' rights person, but then Federalist almost was sort of synonymous with big government.
Yeah.
I suppose.
Yeah.
So the actual meaning has changed. It's switched around.
Yeah, it says then the meaning the Federalist Party led by Alexander Hamilton aims to create a stable, secure country, safe for business, and wealthy men of property. It was all focused on protecting big business and wealthy men with immense amounts of land. So.
Oh yeah, there's another example about George Washington. Right, in today's terms, they said he was wealthy, but like I said, we talked about and he owned George Washington. But again, standard of living. I'd rather live now.
So, well, how good are we on? I think we covered the topic. We started at central banking, and now we're talking about
right. So let's see
problems that happened in the Constitution. So how can we wrap this up?
I don't know. Oh, we got another. Oh, we got another one. Right. Let's see. Let me just see if she's going to arrive. Oh, you. Oh God, we must have been going for a while, didn't we?
Yeah, this has ended up pretty long, so I was saying maybe we should wrap up this segment.
Okay. So, now, do you want me to stop the recording, or then just go to the next segment?
You can edit it or whatever, but I just wanted to give like some kind of summary.
Right.
Like, do you want to give like a little summary, real quick, of what we just talked about? Like the most important thing. What should they have gotten out of this video?
I don't know. I've just gone we had discipline at the start, and then we sort of like, what happened? You talked about the income thing.
Yeah.
Like, and I thought when you said a year's worth, I thought, hang on a minute, that's a little bit.
That's not right. No, I know. And so then that went off.
I was thinking.
Yeah, that went off.
I was thinking libertarian propaganda there. That's
no, yeah, that was too good to be true. That was my bad memory and what I had read, because I remembered it was different, but 2.2 times is a lot.
Having said that, I didn't think it was that good.
Yeah.
I was thinking maybe 5 or 6. I didn't realize it was that it's still a pretty good deal. Very good deal, that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, maybe a future video we can actually work out how much disposable income somebody had in the 60s and 70s compared to now.
Oh yeah, that would be very interesting too.
And of course, they didn't have as good things to buy, like being able to afford vacations, being able to afford home help, things like that.
Yeah.
The gadgets weren't as good, but they could afford help at the home.
Right.
Or someone to help with the gardening, all these other things. Which are, some people value those more than gadgets.
Right. Okay, I have a question to bring things full circle. So just to bring things full circle on the central banking, Federal Reserve full issue. So how should it work then? Should we audit it? Should we end the Federal Reserve and start a new system? What do you think? What would be the ideal? Like what's the next step?
The ideal is to only have the Federal Reserve take in dirty old banknotes, burn them, and print new ones.
Okay.
And now in Australia, when they had the financial crisis, you see, in Australia there is no deposit insurance.
Okay.
And because of that, people think they could lose their money, and because they think they could lose their money, they check their banks out, and because the banks know that people are checking them out, they're more careful, so they make better investments.
Okay.
This is something that Australia does that is absolutely fantastic. Slightly naughty from a libertarian point of view, but is actually very good economics.
Okay.
But actually, I can justify this under responsibility. There is no state pension in Australia. See, in my opinion, you cannot do these two things at the same time. There's not enough money to do healthcare and social security. You can either do one or the other. You can't do both. It's too expensive to do both. So what they do in Australia is they do Medicare, but they don't do the government pension. They don't do social security, but they do Medicare. Another reason they can get away with that is because they've got so many natural resources compared to their population size.
Yeah, their population size is so tiny. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like 25 million, I think.
It's less than the population in California. It's crazy. Yeah.
But this is what they do. This is the thing.
Okay.
They mandate, and I actually asked Peter Schiff this once because I was like a subscriber. It was only $5 a month, folks, and I was once in a webinar with him because that's what subscribers got. I got one webinar with him for $5 a month for about 5 years. One webinar, and I could have got myself a Schiff head cap, but what it is I stopped subscription for a month, then I went back and actually got bumped up to a slightly higher rate. So it was like $5 to $6 a month. Damn it. And so they mandate in Australia. Oh yeah. So how much do you have to pay in Social Security taxes in the United States?
Oh, I don't know.
Do you reckon it's more than 9%?
I'm not sure. I'd have to look at my check.
It's probably more than 9% though, isn't it?
I really have no idea.
While you're looking for that, I'll tell you.
I'm gonna pull it up. Yeah.
I'll tell you what they do in Australia.
Okay.
They say in Australia you've got to put 9% of your income into a private pension. Now, the genius of that is twofold. One, it's probably a lot less government would charge. Plus, that money that goes into those pension schemes, especially with the ratios of what it was like 30 years ago, where you had all of these workers and hardly any retired people, and you had all of this money going into these insurance companies, and they then used that money to grow the economy. Whereas what did they do in America and the United States? They used the Social Security taxes and spent it. They didn't invest in the economy, they just spent it. And so because that money was invested in the economy and grew the economy, they can then afford from that to then pay the people who then, so it's much, that is a much, and they actually did that in Chile, where I think it was Milton Friedman that actually advised them and actually brought in those private pension schemes. And that became a huge source of capital. The fact that you're forcing people, right, I'm not that against it, because, maybe these SPs need to be told to save. Or you can make it super duper clear to them, you will not be bailed out, SPs.
Yeah.
But
right.
SPs are SPs, though.
Well,
I mean, SJs treat SPs like their children, and so
yeah, it's
maybe children need mandates.
No, I don't think so. I mean, I think they need to fall off a cliff if that's what happens. Yeah. Like, if they're an adult human being, then I don't think that. Yeah, that just gets into a philosophical thing, though. But I get what you're saying. I get what you're saying. It seems like
it depends, though. I mean, I would say, though, in terms of mandates, because somebody does have a duty of care. So, for instance, I would say that I've got one for you.
Okay.
Does a parent have a responsibility to provide healthcare for their child?
A parent?
A parent.
Okay. Do they?
Do you think they do?
It's their responsibility, yeah, to nurture their child and to ensure they're healthy. Yeah.
Right. Because they brought the child into the world.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. So that then means that individual, their actions affect the child that they are responsible for. Right.
Well, but see, I reject any premise that anyone in government is responsible for the life of another. Any individual adult is responsible for the life of any other individual adult in their actions.
But they are responsible for their children.
Yeah, children. Direct, like your actual literal descendant. Yeah.
Right. So, you can then say, say you've got parents, then say, well, you are the guardian of your child. With that comes certain responsibilities. This is just like what happens when, if someone's on drugs, right? Is they have certain responsibilities that, only like once someone is retired, then they can like go on drugs and they'll be not affect anything else. Because I'm sure you would say that it's acceptable for an employer to drug test their employees. Yeah,
absolutely. It's their private. You're signing a contract with them, and they can make with the terms whatever they want. You agree to drug test by being employed here. Yeah, that's fine.
So we get into a point of view of like libertarian personal responsibility and how it affects other people, so it's like you're making government small, but making big individuals that have responsibilities, especially towards those people that they are immediately responsible for.
Right.
Now, you could actually work this round the other way, is once those people become older, maybe the families are more responsible for these older people than the actual government.
Yeah, that's what I think. And then that just gets into, I mean, that gets into a lot of complicated issues, because people will go, well, what about all these elderly people who don't have families that are going to take care of them? And don't we have to do something? Like, we as a group have to come together and make sure all these elderly people are taken care of. Isn't it our responsibility then in some way if they don't have a family that's responsible for them? So then does some of that responsibility come onto us? And in a way, yes, I think it does. I think we do have a sense of responsibility to help.
Well, most people have an extended family.
Well, right. And then that's the next line of responsibility. But it's like there is a degree of responsibility that I think is like a human responsibility, that if there's no, like if you're walking past someone in need and there's nobody else around and you're the only person who could give them some water or something, it to me feels like it's a responsibility to help that person. But it just, that starts to get to be an interesting discussion, because there's people I know that would argue for, like libertarians who would argue for a lot more self-interest and kind of selfishness as a principle, which I'm not sure, I never really, I don't know. That's where Ayn Rand and I kind of split a little bit. But
yeah, but I do believe in like the duty of care and like extended families being, because I mean that is big in Chinese society. Yeah. We have a lot of old people in Chinese society.
Right. And I think that
and revered.
Right. And there's an honor. Yeah, there's an honor there for elders, and I think that the West could benefit from more of that, definitely. And it does have to do, I think, with more of a responsible. I feel like that's a whole interesting topic. I could go on a lot of tangents about that. But yeah, why did we start talking about this?
I don't know why. This is the problem with libertarian. It's all interlinked with, because we're talking about government pensions and the mandate.
Oh, right. Right. Okay. That's right.
9%. That economically it's good.
You're right. Okay.
But you see, I mean, the libertarian TI sort of assumes that everyone is logical.
Yeah.
But there are SPs that, and that's how it originally started, though, Social Security. It was the idea, this is for people too stupid enough not to save for their own, because it only covered like a small amount of someone's income initially, and then it kept getting expanded and expanded and expanded. So it's, as Peter Schiff always uses this expression, the camel's nose under the tent with Social Security.
The camel's nose under the tent.
Yeah.
I don't get it.
You've not heard of that? Once the camel's nose is under the tent, you get the whole camel under the tent and stinking the whole place up.
Oh, okay, I see.
It's the camel's nose under the tent.
Oh, okay.
Now, so just make sure that here was got that. I said camel's nose. I did not say camel's toe. That's a completely different metaphor.
All right, so I think we've pretty much exhausted that for now. I actually have to go.
Yeah, I was just about to say to the audience, I think I can detect with my inferior Effie the wind up.
Yeah, when I'm ready to go.
We're winding up.
Yeah.
So hopefully libertarians like this, and we never actually got to the broken window fallacy. So this is going to be a.
Well, we were planning on having people join us, and then they're not here, so we'll try to do that again.
We'll try and do that again. So it's bye from Libertarian Ben.
Okay. Bye from Libertarian Les. Is that me, or am I R-dub today? Okay, I'm Libertarian Les. Okay, all right.
Bye, folks.
All right.